I just want to talk a little bit today about the Idaho Wolf Debate because this has been going on for 20 years now. And there's some things about it that have never added up. Number one, wolves are not an endangered species. Maybe the Mexican wolves are, or the red wolves back in the eastern states, but the timber wolves that we have to deal with here in Idaho are not endangered. They never have been. And the problem that we're having is called the Endangered Species Act. It is an international treaty, and the problem with it is that uh, against the wishes of the U.S. Constitution, it has allowed the federal government to come in and exert management of wildlife matters in the state. When the Constitution was written and divided up, the federal government was not given any jurisdiction over natural resources. And they have since then tried and tried and tried to have their hand into everything by, number one, not turning lands over to the states when they become states here in the West. Something like 60% of Idaho, they claim, is owned by the federal government. According to the Constitution, that doesn't exist, that they're doing that illegally. But they wanted to bring the wolves in here. The problem with that is our ancestors had spent uh, a mass amount of money and a mass resources to get rid of the wolves back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when they finally eradicated the wolves out of the lower 48. Just because they got them out of here does not make them an endangered species, by the way. I just want to make that clear. So what happened is they said, okay, we're going to bring these wolves back in here. By the time they brought the wolves in, we had built up our elk herds to an awesome level. The elk were the jewel of Idaho. They were our treasure. They were the treasure of Yellowstone Park. You could go in and drive through Yellowstone Park and see elk everywhere, and what a awesome thing that was to go see the big bulls and the cows, and we were able to manage those elk just fine by having hunting seasons for when they left the park. We were able to take off the surplus animals. So what was the drive behind bringing the wolves in here? Because what happened was we have predators. We had bears, we have coyotes, we have cougars, and yes, they do take some of the young of these animals. But by putting the wolves in here, it set that predator level above where the elk could handle it, and the population started crashing. And the environmentalists, who say that they're all for the environment, they sit and cheer and they think it's great that our elk populations are plummeting and crashing, and our moose populations. And they cheer that on. And they say, oh, this is great because now we're not going to have overgrazing and all these things. Well, you know what? I never really seen, I mean, you might find a few places around watering holes and stuff where it was stomped out a little bit, but they were not overgrazed. And so I hope that each and every one of you can understand that this wolf debate is nothing but a big lie. And what they do is these wolf advocates, they'll tell you that it's a good thing that we have the wolves here now because they're going to cull the herds and they're going to take the sick and they're going to take the weak. And I'm telling you what, it's a crock of crap. It's nothing but a big lie. What they're doing is, well, exactly what the wolves are doing is they're taking the calves, number one. Well, yeah, the weaker ones, or the ones that are not able to do, they do that. But the problem with that is that we're not getting recruitment. And that's one of the things that really kills our elk herds is we have to have the recruitment of new calves. Number two, they are they don't just take the weak. They're taking down big bulls. They're taking down real healthy cows, and they're just devastating it. The Yellowstone Park, from the best estimates, had somewhere around 20,000 elk in Yellowstone Park when they brought the wolves in, and now we're down to less than 3,000 elk in the park. And when this devastation started, they started talking to the environmentalists, and they're like, oh, well, this is caused by global warming, this is caused by drought. Bull. It's all a bunch of bull. The best estimates, they show that a wolf, one single wolf, eats about 28 elk per year. Now I want you to take that in and think about it, because when we go out hunting as humans, and humans are, in fact, probably one of the bigger predators on Earth. We are the top of the chain. We do eat meat. That's true. But one big elk can feed my family for a full year. We may eat maybe a pound of hamburger for dinner. You know, we mix it in, make tacos or whatever. That is 1 pound of meat for that night. That makes a whole meal. So an elk lasts us a whole year. And for wolves, and you got maybe 15, 16 animals in that pack, you start counting up how many elk are killed per year, okay? What about if you have 1,000 wolves out there? Well, they're going to devastate at least 28,000 elk that year if you have 1,000 wolves. Now, the problem with that is that they don't, that's just what they eat. Sometimes they just go out and kill the animals and let them lay, and then the coyotes and the hawks and the eagles and the raptors and stuff clean those up. And so I think that they kill a lot more than they eat. And this is documented last winter over in Yellowstone Park, when one night they come into there where they feed the elk over in in Jackson Hole, excuse me, and they killed 18 elk one night, and they just left them lay. They didn't eat them. 18 elk. So what do we need to do about this? Well, first of all, try to understand more about what's going on with the wolves. They were brought in here under the guise of being an endangered species, and they're not. They went up to Canada, and they found the biggest wolves they could find, which are called the Mackenzie wolves. And people, you know, the agencies will say, oh, well, genetically they're all the same. Well, maybe they are, but it's like the difference between a moose here in Idaho, for instance, and a moose in Alaska. There's a huge difference in the size of that animal, and there's a huge difference in the size of these wolves. They went up to Canada and found the biggest wolves they could get. Why? Why did they do that? Well, I'm going to let you make your own conclusions. Another thing that happened is they needed congressional approval to bring the wolves in. They didn't have it. They brought them in anyways. They were never given money to bring the wolves in, but they went and took the money from the Pittman-Roberts Act, and in effect took that money out of states that needed that money for educational programs and so forth. And the states, for some reason, didn't protest that. So they go get the biggest wolves, they bring them in here without congressional approval, and without money. They took money that wasn't really theirs to take. And then when they brought them into Idaho, from my understanding, that the documents that were filed in order to allow them to bring in here were not done legally as well. And one of the things I see across the country is as soon as somebody starts talking like that, they say, oh, well, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, no, I've done a lot of studying on this. And what it is it's an agenda. Why would they intentionally bring these wolves in here to devastate our wildlife, and then sit back and talk about what a great success it is, and talk about what a great thing they've done, when you can see clear as a bell, basically, that it's done nothing but devastate what we have here in our state. Our Fish and Game Department here in Idaho has lost millions of dollars. Millions. Because people have quit coming to Idaho to hunt elk from out of state. There's a few that still come, but now they're going to places where the wolves are not yet, like New Mexico, Utah, Colorado. A lot of people are going down there to hunt instead of hunting up here. Well, it's clear that these wolves are also brought in here. They're having a devastating effect on our ranching community. There was one night when the wolves come in and just killed a mass amount of sheep. They've killed cattle. They've killed a lot of problems. They've killed domestic animals, dogs, cats, all kinds of stuff. They also, another problem we're having with them is they have a lot of disease in them. And that disease is, there's a parasite that's getting in the lungs and stuff of our ungulate populations, causing a lot of problems. So what do we need to do? Well, in 1938, there was a voter initiative here in the state of Idaho where they asked the people, what is the direction that you want the Fish and Game to go? Well, they voted that it was for them to manage our wildlife for the consumptive use of the people of Idaho. What does that mean? That means that anybody that wants to get a hunting license should be able to get that hunting license, go out, harvest an animal, and have that for their food for the winter. Well, you cannot praise and manage a bunch of predators and accomplish that task. So since the wolves have been in here, whether the Fish and Game thinks that they're doing their job or not, they're not. The predators need to be heavily managed, not just the wolves, but the bears, the cougars, the coyotes, everything else. And those populations need to be kept way, way down in control so that we can have more animals around for the people of Idaho to harvest. And somebody would say, well, you know, this is this and that's that. But under the Constitution, the wildlife in Idaho does not belong to the state. It does not belong to the federal government. It belongs to the citizens of Idaho. That is our wildlife. The Fish and Game was simply giving charge to manage that for us. That doesn't mean that they own it. That doesn't mean that they have a right to pass whatever law they want. What it means is that it's our wildlife. We give them charge to manage that for our consumptive use. And if they don't do that, then they're not doing their job. We never gave any authority to the federal government to come in and manage our wildlife. And they need to get out of our state. And that's just plain and simple. And so what do we need to do about it? Each and every one of you guys need to get involved in wildlife matters or in any other matter in your state that concerns you. It's time in our country that we got to get off of our butt. We need to get out there and work hard to keep our rights and our freedoms until we can turn this around the other way. And if you come to Idaho, please get your tag and shoot every wolf that you can find in the state, because we need to keep their populations low. We can have some wolves here. We can enjoy hearing them howl if that's what you want, but keep the populations low so that we can have an abundance of all wildlife. If this isn't kept in check, we're going to lose the majority of our wildlife, and the ungulate populations will get so low, and then the wolf populations are going to starve to death, or they're going to start doing massive attacks on domestic animals. So they need to, if we don't keep them in check, that's exactly what's going to happen. And I for one, do not want to lose our wildlife populations. So if you come here, please help us out and take all the wolves that you can legally take. Thanks.